Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Premier Pundits podcast. Of course, it's Thursday, and it is another special FanTeam edition. Once again, I'm joined by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Jason McKenna. Or is it, Mr. McKenna? Is it the money man, McKenna, after a second successful FanTeam cash-in as part of Gameweek 25 Monster Mash? How are you, my friend?
You know what? You've mentioned it, and this is why. I'm doing really good at the moment. FanTeam and I are just having some sort of amazing love affair. It is fantastic. I got overall rank of 217, which isn't too bad, but two teams were in the top 300, so I got 217 and 273. So all in all, I bagged about £70 plus my buy-in, which is fantastic. So the top team that I got, which ended, as I said there, in 217th, 73 points, even with a double naught from Brighton. And it was quite frustrating, that game, because I thought, this is going to be great. Brighton are going to keep a clean sheet. And then, Crystal Palace scored one. Well, I thought, at least they'll get appearance points. And then for some reason, Benteke channeled, I don't know, Pele, Ronaldo, peak Messi. He just came out of nowhere and scored an absolute worldie. But I do have to thank the main man, Veltman himself, for being in my team, coming through and getting me the points. Elsewhere across the board, very happy with the picks. The only thing that I would say that I would change again, but I am still learning the ropes of this game, is a thing called stack penalties. Now, I didn't realise this, but if you have three or two players from the same position, so if you have two defenders from Brighton, say for example, the first defender will be unaffected, but then you bring in a second defender from Brighton and you lose 1 point, and then if you bring in a third defender, then you lose 2 points. So you're already kind of 2 or 3 points down at the start of the game week before the ball's even been kicked off, which I didn't realise, and I apologise to people because I didn't know that rule. I'm not sure if you did, Ben, but going into the
Of course I did.
But as a new player to the game, this is what, my fourth week of playing, and I think I did all right with a stack penalty, with the fact that I got 2 noughts. But I'm much more confident going into this game week because I thought a few of the games last game week were actually quite difficult to predict, and I'm actually feeling more confident on this one. But touch wood, that is not something that brings bad luck. I mean, moving it to your team really quickly, did you do all right, and how confident are you ahead of this game week 26?
Always confident, Jason. Always going at every game week full of optimism. Looking for big returns. A little bit like yourself. In fact, I'm blaming you. You suckered me in to a treble Brighton backline last week. So I went into Monday just outside of the money, but I had, like I say, I had a lot of involvement across various teams, and I was let down badly. In fact, Veltman was the only defender that didn't have out of that back line, including the goalkeeper across various teams. And I also had, I think it was Mupai up front. So I had a lot of interest all over the pitch, and it didn't work out, mate. So I was hugely disappointed. But look, you're going for a 3-bagger. You're looking to make it 3 on the trot. Why don't we have a look at your team and get things kicked off?
Yeah, so as always, going to put it up on screen now so that you can follow along. And as always as well, before we jump into this, Ben is new to seeing this team. This is brand new to him. He doesn't know who I put in as well. So this is raw. We like doing this where we just kind of look at the teams, have an instant reaction. And I don't know if there's a head shake there from some of the players that I have included. But starting at the back, and I have double stacked with defence in Sanchez and Dunk. I like Brighton still, and coming out today, actually, in terms of the Premier Injuries YouTube page, if you want to check that out, we do have a tactic insight into why I believe Brighton are actually a pretty good side that have just been really unlucky so far. And the data suggests it as well. Over the last 5 game weeks, I mean, looking at it, the side are third best for XG conceded. Sorry, that is the last 8 game weeks. So since game week 18. Now, the side have only had an XG conceded of 4.04 goals. They've actually only conceded 3 goals in that time, so they've overperformed, showing the quality of Sanchez. It's just annoying that last game week they couldn't do it against Crystal Palace. And the thing is, what is the big story for me is recently, before this kind of changeover with Sanchez, when Matt Ryan was between the sticks, Brighton were consistently underperforming their XG data. Matt Ryan had a minus 4.5 XG prevented, so he let in 4.5 goals more than he should have. And I think one of the big areas that they've improved as well is XG conceded from set pieces. Sanchez is a bigger person, taller, larger frame, much more physically imposing, and he's winning those situations. He's preventing goals in those situations, whereas Matt Ryan wasn't anymore. So I think this is a big turnaround there. And the game kind of piques my interest as well. West Brom, they had, I think, a fair few chances last weekend. Very squeaky bum time when I was watching, owning Burnley defenders. But they just couldn't finish off their chances. And I think this is something that Brighton have had as well. They're creating chances, as are West Brom, but they're not putting them away. So I think this could be a good game for a Brighton side that will be looking to continue what was previously good form. And also looking at the West Brom kind of attacking data, a lot of people kind of looking at them and thinking, oh, they've turned it around, they're doing quite well. But again, looking at it, there's not a huge improvement in the short term. They're still near the bottom for data. The only problem, the only worry that I have is, and I'm going to try and not butcher his name, Diagne. He has one of the best XGs in terms of players over the last 4 game weeks. I think he's 3rd or 4th. So he is a little bit of a worry. But I do think that the physical, imposing nature of Dunk, Sanchez, but also that whole of that Brighton back line should see them through. What do you think about the Brighton picks there, Ben? Or are you still a little bit worried about their perpetual underperformance?
No, I don't like Brighton. I'm not keen on Brighton. Maybe I'm still a little bit too emotional and feeling a little bit burnt after that performance against Crystal Palace. You have to question if a team like Crystal Palace is scoring 2 goals against you at home, where are you? And almost, and I'm looking forward to seeing this Tactic Thursday video drop on Brighton, because we touched upon it earlier in the season. And at what point do you say, and you mentioned it there, in the opening lines, at what point do you say a team are actually unlucky and we're now coming up to game week 26 and actually you're just not very good? And I'm moving more towards the, what it is, you're just not very good. You're flattered to deceive, you're all, furry and no knickers. It's, no, I'm not sold. And I've been sweet on West Brom for a couple of game weeks now. I watched the game against Burnley, and obviously we were messaging all the way through because I know you had a lot of involvement there, and I had Diagne, again, butchered his name, my apologies, and how they missed some of those chances and how lucky they were. 10 men, you couldn't ask for a better performance other than the fact that leaving with 3 points. I thought they were great, particularly that second half. And you wouldn't, if you hadn't seen what had happened, you would have struggled to see, who was playing with a man down. And that comes on the back of the Manchester United result as well. I think, Sam's got them playing a little bit of a tune there, a little bit of confidence. And, as this could be our head-to-head bet. I mean, so early in the podcast, we could be talking about it because, again, I'm looking the other side. I'm looking at maybe West Brom as opposed to Brighton. The only concern for me would be the absence of Ajay, who will serve a one-match ban. We know that there's going to be at least one enforced change in that. Hopefully that doesn't, unruffle their sort of feathers too much. But West Brom could have Snodgrass, who comes back in, and I think Snodgrass is could have a big part to play in this season running. So I see where you're coming from, but they're just a little bit on the expensive side as well for me. If I'm looking at Sanchez and Dunk, we're talking around in and around that £8.5 million mark. Whereas, if I was to look at, say, Johnson, for example, I think he's in and around one of the cheapest goalkeepers this week, so around maybe 6.2 million. And, this is a game that I think which you could see 0-0 quite easily. I don't think there's going to be a lot of goals in it. So, if Johnson, for 6 million, thereabouts, I think I'd rather prefer to take my chances on him ahead of Sanchez. And likewise, in that back line as well, I think there's, like I say, there's other options in and around the baggies, which I just feel is more value there.
I do like the other explanation why I've got Duncan is I think he's got the aerial ability in those set piece situations. Another thing that is explored in Tactic Thursday. But just to finish off your points then, I think there might be an over-egging of a narrative with West Brom that they've turned around, because looking at it, last 6 game weeks, only 4 goals. Shots inside the box, baggies are third from bottom. Chances created, they're bottom. Big chances created, they're about 10th. There's not like a huge turnaround there. You look at the last 4 game weeks, they're rock bottom of a lot of metrics. So I feel kind of secure there. Whereas Brighton, if I was owning Johnson, yes, they aren't meeting and scoring the goals, and they've got the same amount of goals over the last 6 game weeks as West Brom, but they're creating lots of chances. There is that ability there. So West Brom are not creating the chances. Brighton are, but they're not scoring them. And I feel like against a really poor performing defence of West Brom, that might be their opportunity to nick it. And we'll come on to a little bit later, because I do have a Brighton midfielder as well. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is, going in on it, and we will explore the head-to-head a little bit later. But moving it on, and I've got Semedo from Wolves. Now this one is basically because of the poorness of the opposition. It's a Newcastle without Wilson. I'm sorry here, I'm just coming out here and insulting your home team. We might lose connection all of a sudden here on the Zoom chat, because you're so mortally wounded.
You might lose a friendship.
But the interesting thing for me is it's a Wolves team that we know their historical quality. I'm not kind of sold on their kind of abilities this season. This is something, again, we talked about at the start of the season with Brighton underperforming, and we looked at Wolves and some of their problems, and we kind of explored that at the start of the season as well. But looking at it, I would say that Wolves are a lot better defensively than Newcastle. They're probably a little bit better in attacking, but I think that they've had problems going forward this season. Looking at it again over the last 8 game weeks, Wolves have the 5th best XG conceded, so they're a pretty good defence, but I do have questions. I've said this before in other podcasts about their abilities because of Rui Patricio. I don't think he's a great defender. Goalkeeper. I put him there as kind of a Pickford goalkeeper, that he's not brilliant and he lets in too many kind of opportunities. Looking at it, the side again, they've been on kind of good defensive form. 3 goals conceded in that game week period between 18 and 25. 3 clean sheets. So I think that's kind of a good own. But also, I've got Semedo in there because of his attacking abilities. I do like his dribbling. I do like his ability to get forward. But also, again, reminding people of the mechanics of FanTeam, that at his price point there, if he wasn't to play for whatever reason, then somebody else would come in like Connor Cody, Kilman, or Castro. So Johnny Castro, that is. So looking at it, I think it's a good defence to own in this weekend, and it's quite nicely priced as well. You know, you're talking about Brighton there being quite expensive. I was surprised at how relatively cheap Wolves were because of the opponent that they're playing. Again, not to insult your homeboys of Newcastle, but let's be realistic. They haven't been great going forward this season, and they've lost the main man. I think he contributed at least 30% plus of the goals this season. Alan Saint-Maxim...
60, Jason.
There you go, 60% of the goals. Well, where's that going to come from? I know Saint-Maxim looked good in the last game, but Man United have had problems kind of keeping clean sheets. So I think this is kind of a relatively safe one, and I'm hoping to see at least a clean sheet come the end of the week. I mean, what is your perspective, putting your, Magpies kind of allegiances to the side? What do you think about that pick?
Look, I can see why you would pick somebody like Semedo. Yes, Newcastle are a completely different entity without Callum Wilson. Say you take him out of the team, and you're right. Where are the goals coming from? I think potentially on paper you put that team out, and you look at Almiron, Ryan Fraser, Alan Saint-Maxim, maybe Andy Carroll, possibly Dwight Gale to start. I don't know about big Geordie Joe Linton. He picked up a knock last weekend. But you have a front four there, and maybe with John Joe Shelby sitting in behind that deeper role, being able to pick the pass, unlock the door. He has that creative ability. You almost have 5 players there that can carry the team. And I think there's always that hope, particularly for Newcastle supporters, that any one of those sort of 4 to 5 individuals will create that little bit of brilliance, that little bit of magic. Of course, you can throw Joe Willock in there now as well. He was great on his home debut, having arrived from Arsenal on loan. So, look, at that price, is it worth a punt? Yes. I dare say it probably is. But I would like to think that Steve Bruce is going to be setting up his team, having a look at what's happening with Nuno, and knowing that they can be a little bit more adventurous because Wolves haven't been able to unlock defenses as readily as they had done in previous seasons. So we could see a nice open attacking game, and it may be that there's at least a couple of goals in it, at least a point, or maybe I'd like to see us edge it, maybe 2-1.
The thing is as well, and you've raised the fair point there, that the Wolves team hasn't been great going forward this season, and I've been kind of critical there of Newcastle, but arguably over the last few game weeks, they've been kind of neck and neck in terms of performance. Both got 8 goals, about the same number of shots, about the same number of shots on target, about the same XG. I mean, a lot of the data between these two sides is very similar. It's just because I think the defensive ability of Wolves is a little bit stronger, and we know that Nuno obviously has his defensive roots. I think a lot of their strength in the Premier League is predicated on that ability to see clean sheets out. But there is that worry. As I said there, Patricio reminds me, Pickford, just a flimsy goalkeeper that does let in errors that I don't like. In seasons gone by, there's been quite a few errors leading to goals from Rui Patricio himself. He doesn't often meet the XG prevented kind of data. So it is a little bit of a worry there, but I just feel like Newcastle without Wilson is the reason why. Moving on to a more difficult one for me, because obviously I am an Arsenal fan, and it's Leicester's Pereira who is playing Arsenal this weekend. Arsenal did, I think, all right not to be hammered by Manchester City, but the flip side was we were pretty paltry in attack. And I think this is a problem that maybe is rearing its head again. We saw Emil Smith-Rowe, we saw Martin Odegaard, but the last few games that I've watched, we've not been great kind of going forward. At times we've lacked that creativeness. I don't know if Emil Smith-Rowe is a little bit jaded from playing so many minutes, but looking at it, the side, we do have 11 goals since game week 18, but that is behind Leicester, it's behind Leeds, it's behind West Ham. So we're sitting all right, XG of 9.4, but I don't think it's going to be good enough for the likes of Leicester. And what I also like about Pereira is it's not just the clean sheet ability, which I always say is the bread and butter of these defensive picks. You pick them because you think they're going to get a clean sheet. Anything else on top is an added bonus. Well, Pereira was playing as a winger last weekend. The kind of data that he's had since he's come back isn't brilliant, but Leicester have been keeping those clean sheets. So I'm literally seeing it as Pereira is an out-of-position defender. He has the ability to get a clean sheet, which I think is quite high. Arsenal playing away at Leicester at the King Power Stadium. But they've not been great at home this season as well. So there is a few foibles here. This does make the decision a little bit more difficult, but it's just because he's out of position as well. I think there is that added bonus that he could get on the score sheet or at least get an assist. What are you feeling on that one there, Ben?
Yeah, I love the Ricardo Pereira pick. That was one that I had sort of highlighted myself. Whether Brendan Rodgers goes with, is it Luke Thomas at left back, which allowed Pereira to move across onto the right-hand side. A slight tactical switch that came as a little bit of a surprise, because ordinarily you would probably expect maybe Mark Albrighton to go at the right-hand side of that three. But also you can, there's a few different formational tweaks that Brendan Rodgers could make. Obviously, we're recording ahead of Thursday night's Europa League game, which it's poised on a knife edge at nils each. So Brendan Rodgers got to be very careful. He's going to have to go strong to try and get that result to progress, but also he'll have one eye on Sunday's game. So it'll be a case of maybe looking at that Thursday night's lineup and thinking, try to maybe second guess Brendan in terms of who he could potentially, bring in and rotate. The other major concern for me is how much of an impact the absence of James Maddison, if confirmed, will have on that team. Now, as it currently stands, he hasn't officially been ruled out. What we know is Maddison had surgery, at the back end of last season, which carried over until the beginning of this season. And that really disrupted him and held him up quite a bit. However, he seemed to be finding his feet. He was being managed quite carefully. Then he played in the Europa. He started his second game in quick succession. And then he was withdrawn, complaining of pain in and around that area. Now, Maddison has been down to London this week to meet with a medical specialist just for a little bit further evaluation and assessment on that. Now, dependent on how that evaluation's went and what the feedback will be, that will determine whether Maddison, whether you have something to worry about or it's just, fatigue-related issues and the pain. The one take-home that I took from the Brendan Rodgers press conference on Wednesday was we don't think he needs surgery again. Great. But the red flag is the question's being asked in the first place. Now, if you're thinking, does he need surgery? Does he not? Let's send him down to London. Yes, it's great news, but is he able to turn around his game within 7 days and play, to the maximum of his ability and his potential? So that suggests to me he won't. And then almost, if you're getting rid of Maddison and you're bringing him out of there, who are you then moving forward? I think maybe Tielemans is a possibility to play off behind Vardy, and then maybe you could have Ndidi and Mendy as a two-hole midfielder, which still isn't bad, but you're still talking about disrupting that setup of your team, the mainstay centrally of that, the main spine of that Leicester lineup, which, is a concern and certainly something to be aware of. But, I think the pros of bringing in somebody like Pereira this game week certainly outweigh, the downside if indeed he does play in that advanced role, because I'm not totally convinced that Leicester will keep a clean sheet. I was on Aubameyang for his hat-trick against Leeds, but we know that their defence is fairly porous, unless you're Southampton, of course. And for me, Arsenal need to go out and really produce a performance against teams like this, against the Leicesters. If they're not going to do it against the Manchester Cities of this world, and they still have aspirations of maybe finishing in a European place or top 8, then Leicester's, they've got to go and get something, and for that I believe they will need at least one goal.
The interesting foible of the data here, and I'm going to talk about him because he is in my midfield as well, but Barnes has actually been the bigger producer than Maddison over the last few game weeks since game week 18. He's had 18 chances created, one of them big, whereas Maddison has had 3 big chances created, so showing higher quality there. But then looking at the expected assists from open play, Harvey Barnes has 1.45, Maddison 0.62. He's going to be a loss, but I think, like you've explained there, Ben, there is the kind of positiveness that Leicester now have a little bit of squad depth, so that loss of Maddison that we did see earlier in the season hopefully will not affect them too much, and I'm really hoping it doesn't affect Barnes. Now, the final defender of this 4-man backline is Anderson from Fulham. I think this is one, again, based on the data, but also an upturn in data for the Cottagers. So just, not beating around the bush with Crystal Palace, very poor going forward. I think they were super lucky against Brighton. And this is why, obviously, there is that kind of payoff between luck and poorness in terms of ability. But Brighton, I think, had a 2 XG created in that game against Crystal Palace, whereas Crystal Palace had like a 0.2 and who went away with 2 goals to 1. So it did seem a little bit unfair, that result. But looking at it as well, the kind of defensive data of Fulham has once again kind of improved. They've had a few clean sheets in the last few game weeks. Looking at it since game week 18, they've had 4 clean sheets. They've had a 7.45 XG conceded. It's not bad stuff there. And looking at a Crystal Palace side that were previously allergic to scoring goals, this one is not such a bad result. It's obviously away, but I think this won't matter too much. I think this kind of focusing on away and home this season, it's kind of by the by because there's no fans, there's no kind of problems with that. I'm quite quietly confident of a Fulham team that has had 4 clean sheets in the last few game weeks. It's not a bad game for them. I'm looking forward to watching this one, hopefully seeing Fulham put in a good performance against Crystal Palace. I do have a soft spot for both sides. I think they're both nice little London teams that I have previously visited before, obviously lockdown and everything. But in terms of this match, I think he's really nicely priced at 7.5. I mean, looking at it, Semedo, Pereira and Anderson at 7, lower than 8 million in terms of this FanTeam prices. I think they're all really nicely priced and people should be considering them. So on that last defensive asset there, Ben, what are your thoughts and feelings? Is there kind of any injury news that should worry us about Fulham, or is this one that we can be confident in?
Pretty much, a fit and healthy squad other than long-term absentees. Mitrovic rejoined the squad this week, but that, will have no impact on that Fulham backline. Congolo demoted down to the under-23s following a breakdown and going against lockdown protocol and enjoying a birthday party. But again, since his arrival, I think it was from Huddersfield, he hasn't been involved too much. Fulham, I've been on Fulham defence in every one of the last 4 game weeks and been, very happy, pleased with what Scott Parker's doing there. This game, I'm just not as confident as I have been in the past. We've seen a slight tweak in formation at Crystal Palace. I know that didn't really reflect in any difference in output against Brighton. They went from their typical solid 4-4-2 to a 4-3-3, and that front attacking line, I think it was Andros Townsend on the left, and Andre Ayew, or Jordan Ayew, sorry, on the right with Mateta down the middle. Will Benteke come back in after his winning goal? It remains to be seen, but Palace may gain a little bit of confidence from that. Obviously, it's one of the rare wins that they've had in the absence of Wilfried Zaha, so that's a monkey off their back. And Fulham, haven't been prolific in front of goal. They've been pretty tight. So this is a game where I can maybe see it being a goal either way. Like I say, I'm not as confident as I have been in the past. It's a coin toss for me, this one.
It is. I'm more confident than you, Ben. I'm looking forward to it and hoping for the result there. But I do see your points. And one person that you did back, Mateta, he did score this weekend. Previously, it was really funny, kind of off air, we talk and everything, and you were dead excited to see Mateta. And then because he scored this weekend, there was a text filled with a lot of profanities because of ruining that lovely Brighton treble up that I lured you into. I'm sorry that I'm such a temptress. But anyway, moving on to the midfield. And I think there's one person in there that doesn't need too much explanation. I think worries over him are kind of over-egged as well, kind of talking about that. I do have Salah. He's playing Sheffield United. Sheffield United have been so poor defensively. And since game week 20, Mo Salah has a very high XGI of 4.08. He has 4 goals. He's got a lot of shots, 18, 14 inside the box, which is the second most during that game week period, just coming behind Bamford and Watkins, who are drawing first on 16. So it's not bad at all. Looking at his underlying data, he's the focal point of that Liverpool attack. Obviously, they haven't been doing too well recently. I mean, it seems like Anfield is the anti-Anfield for them, and that they seem to be doing better almost away from home at the moment. It's embarrassment after embarrassment there. But looking at it, this should be a game that Liverpool do well in. It's why he's priced so high. He will be my captain as well. So I've got no real concerns over that one. I think Salah is a bit like a player that just transcends form. He's been ticking away nicely even when Liverpool haven't been doing too well. So are you confident in Salah? Is he in your starting 11? Or do you think that maybe this one is something that I'm looking too much at positively and I should be focusing my attentions elsewhere from Mo?
I like Mo Salah. It's hard not to like him when you look at the numbers. Other than the fact that maybe the goals return is a little bit below what we would expect from such a quality player. The only thing that I have with Liverpool in terms of their price point is they continually seem to disappoint this season, and it depends on how you play your game and how risky you want to make things. Differential Dinnery would look at somebody like Salah, as will, I would expect, 1, very high ownership this game week, and 2, I would expect, even higher, captaincy within the community. So there's that. Now you want to decide, well, actually, do you want to stay with the pack and stay in with a chance, if he does bang, or do you want to swim against the tide, take a little bit of a punt elsewhere, and hope that Sheffield United produce the defensive kind of performance that we know they're more than capable of? Liverpool, fail to hit those dizzy heights as they have done in recent times, and like I say, they come, with a hard-fought, low-scoring game where Salah does very little. So, look, I will have a couple of entries this week, as I always do. There will be one team which certainly does captain Mo Salah, one team. But for me, playing the game the way I like to play it, I will have at least 2 other teams that will not have Salah in. And I will be taking that chance, that gamble on the fact that, again, Liverpool are stuttering and, he doesn't bang. There's one thing that does potentially come to mind and might, and not that it should, but it may have some impact on how Liverpool perform. It could be, we heard, thoughts out to Alisson Becker. We just recently found out today, which is Thursday, that his father passed in an unfortunate accident. So that was a sudden loss. Now you can see, the Liverpool players getting behind Alisson and saying, right, well, we're going to go out and we're going to give a big performance and we're going to dedicate it to him and dedicate it to his family and let him know we're in the thoughts. And, that may just be that little bit of a incentive and snap for Liverpool to raise their performance and really go out there and do a job on a Sheffield United team who are, very fragile in terms of their confidence. So, yeah, look, I will have cover, but, me other couple of teams I'll probably look against, I'll take a gamble and a punt against those Liverpool players.
And I would just like to share your reflections there of obviously Alisson reaching out there. Very sad to hear of that passing. And also with Jurgen Klopp as well, it seems like everything that could possibly go wrong for Liverpool this season has emotionally off the pitch, but also on the pitch as well. It's not a great time for them, and it doesn't seem fair as well, putting kind of any rivalries you have aside. They don't deserve that kind of thing. But moving on back to the FanTeam discussions, and exactly what you said there, you can go against the tide with FanTeam. You can make a few teams, which is great for each game week, because you could captain Salah, you could captain a very maverick choice that could be coming up in the future with my team or with Ben's team, some of the choices that we talk about here. So yeah, that's the wonderful thing. You're not kind of constrained like in Fantasy Premier League, where you can only have one team, and if you do have more than one team, then you're kind of banned from the game, and it's no fun there. But let's move on to the rest of my midfield, and we go on to Leandro Trossard, who is from Brighton. Obviously, again, the away game, we're talking about the West Brom. Now, looking at it, West Brom's defence, I would say, has improved a little bit over the last few game weeks, especially since Big Sam has come in. In terms of XG conceded, they're just behind West Ham, and this does give me a little bit of worry. Ben is kind of drinking his tea there, almost like...
I'm settling in for the night.
Yeah.
I've got me popcorn, I've got me cuppa. Oh, hey, this is great viewing this. Carry on, Jay.
But then I look at Brighton, and XG, third best in the last 6 game weeks. Shots inside the box, they have had the most. They're doing all right with their underlying data. They've had the most chances created. But then I look in the last 6 game weeks. I have to scroll. Oh, there they are. Bottom of the table for goals scored. Now, in terms of it, I think, again, this is an underperformance. It's not great, and it does worry me a little bit. The reason why I got Trossard in, but for the reason that you've explained a little bit earlier, I could take him out of another team. I think this is a very maverick move, very differential. But you look at him himself, and he has good underlying data. His XGI, 3.22, is only behind the likes of Salah, Rafinha, Bruno Fernandes, Antonio, Sterling and Gundogan over since game week 20. That's the last 6 game weeks. That's pretty impressive stuff. I think that Brighton have underperformed in terms of the goal scoring. I think it has to turn around, or we could continue and just say that we write off the team as, midfield and forwards, they're just not very good. But looking at that underlying data, I have the feeling that this is the game week where they play a side that haven't been able to prevent many goals going against them this season. There is a slight upturn, but I think this is the kind of game week where Trossard can come to the fore. We said that, you're quite sweet on Diagne. Well, Trossard has a higher XGI than him. So I don't know. I feel that this might be a Maverick McKenna pick. This might be too differential for the Dinnery though. But this is one that I'm not 100% confident in. But this is the kind of game week where you can have a bit of fun, and this is the great thing about FanTeam as well. You might not pay off. With a second team, I might put somebody else in, but you're not going to be punished over the long term. It's just for one game week, and I'm willing to risk it, put the chips down on Trossard.
Yeah. This is, for me, we talk about the underlying stats, right? And this, for me, is where there's a little bit disparity between certain players and certain teams and underlying data. Had we talked about a Mo Salah, as we touched upon before, and we'll say, look, Mo Salah isn't producing. He's but his underlying stats are great. You go, well, actually, yeah, there's a big performance bubbling under the surface because Mo Salah has been there. He's done it. He's produced the performances in the big game. He's got the goals and he's got the assists. So yes, I'll take that underlying stats on board. But when we're talking about Brighton and when we're talking about individuals and having great underlying stats, I don't see potential in that. I say, well, you know what it is? You're just not very good. And that's why you are, because you're having the opportunities to return and score these goals and have these assists, but you're just not able to convert them. And that's why you are at a low to or mid to low team, and maybe why that's what separates you from those elite level players. So I don't see that as being a positive necessarily, although yes, there's potential, and you're thinking, well, one of these days that performance has got to turn, and he's going to bang. And I hope he does for you this weekend, Jay. But for me, it is a massive red flag, because you can look at some of those individuals at Brighton and think, you know what, they are decent. They're fairly pleasing on the eye. They play a nice branded football, but ultimately, what is it getting them? They could be going into the back end, the business end of the season, and they could be fighting to stay in the Premier League once again. Now, that's all well and good if you've just come up from the Championship. And even if it's your second season and you're stabilising, but it's not. Brighton are, they should be more, I'm going to say, robust. They should be, they're used to the rigours of playing. They know what it's all about. They should have the personnel to be able to cope with the demands and deliver the performances and get those results. And if they're not, then there's issues there, whether it be recruitment, whether it be the personnel, or whether we just look at these players and that's all they are. Like I say, all fur and no knickers. You look decent, but really, what are you giving us? I'm not even getting any outside top here. It's a bag of chips and I'm on the bus home because I'm getting mixy, and that's what I feel about. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but that's how I feel about Brighton at the minute.
The thing is, defensively, I think Brighton can improve these performances, but with Trossard, I do get this, and I really know the risk. I do know the risk. It's why I've got him in one of my teams, but I won't have him in all my teams. But it's one of those ones that I think if it pays off, it can have huge dividends because people have these problems. Looking at Trossard, the player is the biggest goal threat of the Brighton side, 0.4 goal creating chances per 90, which is the same as the likes of Sadio Mane, Heung-min Son. But it's as you said there, it's the ability to put these away. Pascal Gross is playing some of his best football, I think, ever for Brighton. Fantastic kind of 4.22 shot creating actions per 90. He's had 42 chances created this season. He's up there in terms of minute per chance as the top four kind of creators are Grealish, De Bruyne and Fernandes. They're the only players better than him minutes per chance created. That's impressive stuff, but I feel like the problem is from the likes of Trossard not putting these away, from Mapai not putting these away, but against the West Brom defence that is not brilliant. This could be a good game week, but it could just be a blank. But I'm willing to put it out there as my kind of differential pick of the week. Looking elsewhere, though, looking at the Lookman himself, I think he's not too much of a differential. I think you can have a bit more confidence in him because he's part of a Fulham team, again mentioning their upsurge in defensive data. Well, looking at their attacking data, they're top half of the table, top 10, top 9. Quite good stuff. 8.15 XG created over the last 4 game weeks. 6 of them scored. So a slight underperformance. But then looking at the kind of individuals within that Fulham team, and Lookman has the highest XGI. He's either involved with the scoring or the build-up and creating chances, getting involved there. 2.32 XGI. Don't know if you can hear, but my cat is at the door, so apologies there if you can hear her. Maybe she's meowing in disgust at my
agreement.
Or maybe at disgust at the Trossard. She's thinking, what is he? Even me, as a cat, as a feline, can recognise that is an absolutely ridiculous pick. But looking at it, Lookman, I think he's a great pick, and he's playing a poor Crystal Palace defence. That one gets the Dinnery thumbs up from him there. So you like him. He's been looking good. And to be fair, we've been sweet on him for quite a few game weeks. So feline problems have been removed for the time being. I'll put her in another room and give her a little treat because, I don't want her upset. So we'll move it on to the Foxes. So moving from pet to wild animal there. But looking at the Foxes, I've put in Barnes again. And I've been waxing lyrical about him for a long old time. The data is finally aligning with some great kind of output. He's looking so good. The only problem for me is one of the criticisms previously of Arsenal has been an inability to keep clean sheets. But they look good against Man City. They did allow a few opportunities early on in the game, but then that kind of settled down. It was a masterclass from Pep Guardiola tactically. He totally nullified any sort of Arsenal attack. But going kind of into the defensive data, Arsenal have been kind of all rightish this season. That they've done okay, but they've only kept 1 clean sheet since game week 18. So I look at that and I think, well, there's a positive there. They're kind of limiting the chances of their opponents, but they're still leaking goals. They've had kind of embarrassments here and there in terms of results. Not winning against Crystal Palace, I think, was a bit annoying for me as a fan. They couldn't get the result against Wolves. That was due to obviously kind of conceding a penalty and then getting a red card. But the Arsenal team hasn't been great kind of keeping out and keeping clean sheets. So I think there could be a goal there. Might be 1, it might be 2, but it's not going to be, the old style of kind of a 6-0 drubbing at one of the top 6 sides, which we kind of were used to as Arsenal fans. We kind of go, right, we're playing Liverpool this week. How many is it going to be? Is it going to be 4? Is it going to be 5? Now you kind of think, well, we might have a chance because we're keeping lots of goals out. We might nick a goal. But again, I don't think Arsenal have the quality at the moment. There's been a little bit of a dip in form from when we were playing fairly good football and creating lots of chances. But looking at it from the Barnes perspective, he's in fine form. Really good data, lots of kind of shots, high XGI. As I said, they're even more involved with the chance making than Maddison, which is odd to say, but he has looked good. And I'm very excited to see what Barnes can do, but obviously the flip side as an Arsenal fan, scared of what he can do against the Gunners. So looking at him as an FPL asset, I know previously you were kind of on the Maddison train, whereas I was on the Barnes train. But if Maddison is injured, are you now fully behind the Barnes train as well?
I wouldn't say I was fully behind. I'll be certainly watching with interest. The only concern or the only worry that I would have is it's great having good data when you have Maddison in the team. Maddison provides a perfect foil. He's undoubtedly the main man really in that Leicester lineup. And that maybe allows Barnes to maybe just fall underneath the radar a little bit. Maddison can occupy minds a little bit more, whereas now focus might shift onto Barnes, and we still forget he's very young. He's got a lot of weight of expectation on his shoulders. It could go, one of two ways here. Is he going to really stand up and, stake his claim for being the main man at Leicester City, or will he crumble under that pressure? Say if we're not sure what the situation is with Maddison yet, but I will probably look at the data at Leicester and particularly Barnes with and without Maddison and how they performed. Again, I just cast my mind back to the end of last season and that poor run of where, how quickly Leicester sort of fell from grace, with one or two injuries in that squad. And there were very few highlights or shining beacons there was to take away during that run in. So that's what made me concerned. But, if players learn from their experience, if they can draw upon those times when things weren't going so well and look to, remedy that and bring something new to the game, then great. I think it's a tough one to call on Sunday. I'm not sure if I'll have a lot of interest in terms of fantasy engagement with Arsenal or Leicester. I think both teams on their day both have the quality to be able to unlock defences. The Europa League will give a better insight for me with regards to where Brendan Rodgers is going with his team.
It's one to keep an eye on, and obviously we're doing this before we know the teams and everything, so there is that word of warning. Obviously, if there's an injury to somebody like Barnes as well, apologies, but we will be changing our teams. It's just the reality. We can't stick with it, and this is the reality as well of making these kind of programs here. But hopefully we're giving you good advice, good insight into other players that hopefully not all of them will be injured. I mean, imagine that. What's the chances of all 11 players being injured before the weekend? But let's move it on to the final two. And they're both from Leeds. So we'll start off with the one that actually excites me most. He is a midfielder. He is Raphinha. Again, somebody that you and I have been very keen on over the last few game weeks. And he seems to keep improving and proving the point of why we believe in him. Raphinha has been on a great run. He's scored a fair few goals, got a few assists. And for the FPL community, this was a good week for him because, a lot of people kind of saw that situation with Wolves where I felt like Leeds kind of almost were cheated out of a victory because of, VAR and things like that. And then they came good in that Southampton game, and that's what really buoyed me. But the other thing is as well, is I think Raphinha might again be a bit of a differential this week, as well as Bamford, and the double-up surely will be a very rare thing to see, because people are very keen on Aston Villa, very keen on their defence. But looking at that, probably without Grealish, who is a huge talisman figure, you kind of look at their data without him. It's kind of almost similar to Crystal Palace. Obviously, he's not been injured for a long time. I think you can remind me properly, Ben, it was sometime in September 2019, so he's had 48 Premier League games on a run without injury. Then they didn't do too well last week. But I don't think it was just the loss of Grealish that is kind of the worry. It's also the fact that in the last kind of 6 game weeks, there's been a big downturn in their defensive abilities. I think Martinez has shown possibly why he is in for Goalkeeper of the Season award, if there is such a thing. But looking at their own individual data, Aston Villa are in the bottom 3 for goal attempts in the box conceded. They've conceded 8 in the last 6 game weeks, 10 big chances conceded, and an XG of 8.31 puts them in the bottom half of the table. Only 3 clean sheets in the last 6 as well. It's worrying. 106 goal attempts puts them rock bottom. So I think that there has been a little bit of a shift there. This could be, as you and I have talked previously, Ben, that it's the COVID kind of situation catching up with them, that little period of total uncertainty, that inability to train, that inability to keep fitness up, is kind of caught up with them. And as I said there, Martinez has done a great job saving them in these situations and racking up loads and loads of save points, getting bonuses. But the problem is how long can that continue? And against the Leeds side that are very good in front of goal, will create a lot of chances and have frankly been really good over the last few weeks. As said there with Rafinha, just up there at fifth best XGI of all players in the last 6 game weeks. I think that this could be a high scoring thriller. So what are your thoughts on Rafinha? And I'll get on to the B word of Bamford. I know it's like a swear word for you, so I might not even ask if you feel good on that one because, you know, you've got the biases against Bamford. But with Rafinha, we've kind of come to a middle ground of accepting he's quite good and we both like him. What are your thoughts and feelings on that one against Aston Villa?
Yeah, happy with the Rafinha pick. He was part of my lineup last week, and you know, if Leeds are going to score and if they're going to do well, it's only going to be, you know, one of two players, Bamford and Rafinha. Of course, I think, you know, you save a little bit of money with Rafinha, and I would always prefer to go down that route. He adds, you know, that extra bit of offensive returns coming from set pieces as well. So yeah, look, I'm all over Leeds. That little bit of inconsistency. I know it maybe isn't, you know, you look at that Wolves result, but they also got beat at home off Everton as well, and Everton weren't in great form. The performance against Arsenal, particularly opening 45 minutes, you know, you think, oh well, they'd go to Arsenal, but Arsenal haven't been great, and they're not the Arsenal of old. So you just don't really know what kind of Leeds team's going to go out there and perform. But look, if it hadn't been for Emiliano Martinez, you know, Leeds would have been on the Aston Villa would have been on the back of one or two sort of heavy defeats. And yeah, they've lost Matty Cash as well. They've got El Mohammadi coming in at right back. El Ghazi came in for Jack Grealish, and it might just take him, you know, a couple of games to get back up to speed. I must say, El Ghazi, I thought he was very unlucky to lose his place when Ross Barkley came back to full fitness. He was one player that seemed to, you know, really sort of relish that opportunity and flourish in the absence of Ross Barkley. And Barkley came straight back, and that was it. El Ghazi was gone. So that must be fairly disheartening. You know, there's got to be a lot of emphasis on those guys to fill some big boots and Jack Grealish. What I would say is, although highly unlikely that he'd be involved, he certainly isn't ruled out 100%. We know that the injury itself, most people refer to it as shin splints. It's not a case of, it's not a definitive yes or no. Is he fit? Is he not? You know, it is possible that the condition can be managed. So that comes down to, you know, pain management and how he may respond to treatment in between sort of games. What I would say is, you know, if, you know, had double game weeks and what have you, if you're looking to plan, you may struggle to start games in quick succession. But, you know, if he's held back and he does some light work this week, then it is possible, it's certainly not out the realms that, you know, Grealish could be involved. And again, that just changes the whole dynamic of that Villa lineup and potentially of the, you know, of them going into that game and the potential result against Leeds.
The sad thing is, though, is that we'll have no insight from the Aston Villa backroom staff as to whether he will be playing because they've been banned from Fantasy Premier League. And just a reminder again, do check out the Premier Injuries YouTube page because we do discuss that in depth with Dr. Raj Brar, the fantasy doctor, to give you insights into your teams. But we move on to the final player. It is Bamford. It is one that has caused the family rift between Ben and I. It's caused a fair few arguments in the home, and well, he's been a bit of a person that's put a rift between us, hasn't he, Ben? But looking at him, Bamford again is a great player to own for this game week. There, the only kind of caveat that I give here is the loss of Phillips. What do you think Leeds are going to be like without him? How long is he out for? Obviously, they played without him last game week and did very well against Southampton. So is this going to be a long-term thing? but kind of looking at Bamford as well, he's still up there, most shots inside the box, quite a high XGI, a fairly high XG of 1.97. I think he's still got that ability. That the good thing about Leeds is it's almost kind of the whole unit is a chance creating unit, but Phillips is a big loss. So does that dampen a little bit Rafinha and Bamford as well?
Yeah, the loss of Phillips cannot be understated. Leeds have struggled. Now, I am casting my mind back to an injury that Phillips had earlier in the season. And if I recall correctly, one of the first games that Phillips missed was in the reverse fixture. And it was a game that, it was a difficult game, but Leeds went to Villa Park and got a great result. Was it 3-0? I'm leaning towards maybe 3 or possibly even 4-0. And we thought, oh, well, Leeds can cope without Phillips. However, in subsequent games, we've really seen how much they did miss him and haven't been great. Second 45, they were superb against Southampton, but maybe that was more of a reflection against Southampton's performance as opposed to Leeds. Leeds have got other concerns elsewhere. Jamie Shackleton in midfield, who would maybe potentially come in for Phillips, is struggling. We've also got Klitsch, who came in. He's managing the problem as well. If both of those players miss out, and obviously Phillips we know is going to miss out, then that's going to require another little bit of a reshuffle from Bielsa. Now, somebody who looks at predicting these lineups find it massively frustrating. I mean, we've seen Leeds go with that 3-3-4 against Southampton. A move away from, and you see Ayling move into midfield, and we've seen Dallas being shoved around. We've seen Alioski miss out in recent weeks. So, to me, it comes down to Bielsa as well, and maybe not trying to overcomplicate things just because maybe one or two players are missing, and then you of course you're working on this information that these players are going to come into that position and it's going to be seamless. They're going to transition seamless from one of other positions and they're going to deliver that performance. And for me, there are too many again sort of red flags or worries or maybe risks for us to go too heavy. Maybe on Leeds. I would tread carefully, just because I don't want to be sucked in by that result against Southampton. When the reality is, Southampton haven't been great. Had they lost 6 in a row before the draw with Chelsea, I believe, and then they lost Romeu again to injury, and so their squad that's decimated with injury. There's a lot of fatigue in there. Hasselhüttl had rotated heavily. He took Danny Ings out. He took Minamino out. So, yeah, while it was good and it was a nice 3 points, I certainly wouldn't expect them to go out and steamroller Aston Villa with or without Jack Grealish.
So the final question to you then is, who would you have instead of Bamford? Because he is obviously 11 million this game week. He's actually one of the most highest priced strikers. Looking at the likes of maybe Calvert-Lewin, I'm not too keen on Everton just because of poor underlying data, but he seems to transcend that. Jamie Vardy, would that be loading up too much on Leicester because I've already got Barnes? Willian Jose against Newcastle, but then there's obviously the fact that Wolves haven't been great going forward. There's not too many enticing forwards this game week, which is the interesting thing. I mean, who would you be shifting your attention to, Ben?
A slightly risky punt. You could go one or two ways. And again, you don't want to get pulled in, to one-off results, maybe. But I am drawn to the Everton game against Southampton, for obvious reasons. Southampton haven't got an orthodox right back that we know. So, that would be an area for somebody like Carlo Ancelotti to exploit. I think Jan Bednarik has played on the right. Jack Stevens has played on the right. Hazelhutton also went with Ward-Prowse The absence of Romeo in the centre of the park could be huge, particularly when we have it again. We don't not really seeing a natural replacement to come in there. Hassan has already talked about, the performance of Nathan Teller midweek, and he sort of hinted that he could possibly start the game. Now, that would be only his second Premier League start, I think, in his career. So, yes, we'll see Ings and we'll see Minamino back, but Everton, hopefully, will certainly be looking to build on the back of that Merseyside derby win. If you don't want to go for, it's worth spending the extra money, I suppose, on Calvert-Lewin. Whether he starts or not, we're not 100% sure. He looked great when he came on, but if he doesn't, then it's going to fall down to Richarlison, who has, hit a little bit of a purple patch. He's playing well, and there's a little bit of competition in those attacking positions up front. So that's maybe keeping some of those players on their toes. And Ancelotti's already been out and he's sort of been bigging up Richarlison today. He's a quality player. We expect him, I fully expect him to get more than his 10 goals this season with absolute ease. So, he might be a player that, sort of is, he's tickling me fancy just a little bit, Richarlison. And Jason, just before we go, we can't let you forget, you're winning 2-0 in the series. Last week's head-to-head, null and void, my friend, I'm sorry to say. I think if I do recall correctly, it was my Jack Grealish against your Harvey Barnes, highest point scorer. Was that right?
I think so. Right? But I mean, just because he didn't play doesn't mean that I shouldn't win. I think it shouldn't be null and void because,
I mean, is that the type of game you want to play? Is that really how you want to roll?
I think that's how Jose Mourinho would play.
Yeah, well, that's not the Mr. McKenna that I know and love.
No. We're very loving here. I will chalk that off as null and void. I will be totally fair. I'm only messing with you, Ben. Nothing but love for you here. So, yeah, what is this week's head-to-head then? Just a little fun thing for people who might not have listened. We do this each week, just 2 teams or 2 players that we pit against each other, just for the fun of it. There's nothing too much on the line, but we like to have a little laugh because we quite often come in with very, opposing views like we saw at the start of this podcast. So go into it, Ben. What's this week's head-to-head going to be?
Well, there seems to be one standout disagreement heading into game week 26, and that appears to be my love for West Brom against your love for Brighton. So how about some kind of Brighton stroke West Brom involvement there? I know you're sitting on Dunk and Sanchez and very hopeful of a clean sheet. Why don't we just go, I was going to say a clean sheet, because, yeah, I think the value definitely is there with West Brom. So I'll just say, look, I put my clean sheet against you not having a clean sheet.
I like it. You know what? I will say, I'm going to say that Brighton will win the game and will more likely have a clean sheet. So I think, yeah, you know what? I'll put clean sheet to clean sheet. I think that Brighton will keep a clean sheet. That's why I got them in my team. I'm happy with that. And obviously through that, I think I'm going to double up and actually say that Brighton will win as well. Are you going to take that bait, or are you just going to settle with...
I hear what you're saying, Jay. Look, and I see your Brighton win to 0, and I raise you a West Brom win to 0 with a Dianga goal.
Oh, that is outrageous. I love it.
It's a triple whammy. 3-bagger.
Or, well, then I've got to come in with Trossard as well, don't I? I've got to put my money where my mouth is and say triple bagger as well. Let's do it. Triple bagger on the Baggies versus Brighton. That is a great one to end on. But as always, for now, we just have to say good luck to everybody. We hope that we've helped you with your teams. Give a fascinating insight into mine. Some Maverick picks. Maybe some boring ones as well, but Ben and I have had fun chatting about it all with you. And just to remind you, do enter the fan team this game week, because you know, you can win a lot. There's the monster 75k weekly. This one for game week 26, you can win 7.5k for the first place person. But, you know, there are other games as well. You can enter the slightly smaller one with £1.80 buy-in, but that has a pretty big prize as well with 1.5k to the first place person. Really good stuff, really exciting stuff. And as said, it's slightly different from FPL. It doesn't punish you if you get it wrong for one game week, you captain the wrong person. No, you restart all over again, which is absolutely fantastic. And I do have to thank Ben just for getting me involved with this. It's been so fun kind of getting involved, winning a little bit of money as well, because you don't have to come first to win money with this. You can come all the way down like I did this game week in 230th and still walk away with 30 quid and you're buying as well. I mean, that is super stuff, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, mate, look, it's been great having you on board. Love these chats. Love listening to a different perspective. Obviously, you know, and I stress this every week, I play devil's advocate. I know you're the stats man, and I know there's a lot of foundation and research goes into those picks. And I'm just throwing something else in there, you know, so people who are watching the video can maybe, you know, appreciate all of the options that are available heading into this game. But yes, look, there's there's games for every entry level, for every budget. So take a look. And good luck, everyone. I know I'll have my fingers crossed. I will be having multiple entries, as I always did, hoping to build on my success in the Champions League. And I'll be watching out for this guy for his 3-bagger, 3 weekends in a row, leaving with a cash. So, Mr. McKenna, as always, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I can't wait to speak to you again soon. But for now, it's goodbye.